The night Clara Meadows knocked on my door, I had been sitting alone in the dark for 20 minutes. Not because anything was wrong. I had eaten dinner, washed the plate, and then just sat down in the chair by the window and let the quiet settle in around me the way it did most evenings since Anna left. 3 years of that kind of quiet. The kind that stops feeling like emptiness after a while and starts feeling like furniture. You arrange your life around it. You stop noticing it until something bumps against it. The knock was soft. 3 quick taps, like she had almost talked herself out of it twice before she finally did it. I opened the door and Clara was standing on the porch step with her arms crossed against the cold. She was still in work clothes. Jeans, a flannel shirt, hair pulled back fast and loose the way people do it when they are dealing with something and appearances stopped matching about an hour ago. She had a flashlight in her left hand even though my porch light was on. "The boiler," she said. "I can't get it started. Eli's already under 3 blankets and it's supposed to drop to 22 tonight." I grabbed my jacket off the hook. Clara and her son Eli had moved into the old Hennessy place 8 months before. The property sat about a quarter-mile down the road from mine. 6 acres, a barn that leaned a little to the west, and a house that needed more attention than it was getting. Her husband Martin had inherited it from an uncle he had barely known. He had been planning to fix it up, make something of it. Then Martin died. Heart attack at 41. No warning. The kind of thing that changes the shape of everything that comes after it. I had known her to wave at since she moved in. I had stopped once to help her get her truck out of the mud in the spring. I knew her son Eli was 16 and serious-faced, and that he sometimes walked to the road and back in the evenings like he was working something out. I knew she was managing something too large for one person without ever once looking like she needed to say so. I did not know her. Not really. Not yet. The boiler was in the basement. Old oil-fired unit, probably installed the same decade the house was built. It had tripped on a safety limit and locked itself out the way they do when something upstream is not right. Eli stood in the doorway at the top of the stairs in a sweatshirt and wool socks, watching me work without saying anything. He had Martin's serious look. I figured that from the one photograph I had seen on their mantel when I came through the front room. Clara had coffee waiting when I came back up. "You didn't have to do that," I said. She handed me the mug. "I know, but you didn't have to drive over here in the dark either." Eli looked at me from the doorway. "Is it going to hold?" "Should be fine tonight. Filter needs replacing before next winter. Line could use a good flush too. Nothing urgent." He nodded once like he was filing it away. "Okay, thanks." That was all he said. Then he went back down the hall. Not rude, just contained. The kind of teenager who processed things slowly and did not perform gratitude he was still working up to. Clara watched him go and something moved across her face that she did not fully hide. "He used to talk more," she said. Not to me, mostly to herself. Then she looked at the mug in her hands. "He'll get there." I drank my coffee and did not say anything that tried to fix it. Some things do not need fixing. They need time and the sense that the people around you are not panicking. I drove home thinking the night had ended right there. Neighborly favor, warm coffee, cold road. Done. It had not ended. I just did not know that yet. 2 weeks later, she knocked again. It was a Saturday afternoon, clear and cold, and this time she had a folder with her. She stood on my porch holding it the same way she had held the flashlight, like it was the thing keeping her from going under. "I have a problem," she said. "A bigger one." I stepped back from the door. "Come in." She sat at my kitchen table and spread the papers out slowly, the way people do when they have been organizing their dread for a long time. "Legal notices. A letter from an attorney's office in the county seat. A copy of something stamped by a probate clerk. Martin's brother, she said. Douglas. I did not know Douglas Meadows personally. I had seen him once at a distance when he came around in the fall. Big man, late 40s, drove a truck that had never hauled anything. He had a way of standing on other people's property that made it look like he was already measuring it. He's saying the land should have been his. She pressed one page flat with 2 fingers. He's saying Martin wasn't in his right mind when he had the deed transferred. He's saying I talked him into it. I looked at the page. The words were careful and legal and designed to make her feel like the ground was less solid than it was. When did Martin transfer the deed? 14 months before he died. He was completely healthy. She shook her head. He did it because he wanted Eli and me protected. He knew Douglas would come around if anything happened. He told me that. He said, Douglas will find an angle. He always does. What kind of angle? She looked at the window. Douglas has a letter. He says Martin wrote it years ago saying the land should stay in the family. Not a legal document. Just a letter. But he's using it to file a challenge. That settled in the room for a second. What does your lawyer say? She went quiet. Clara. I don't have one yet, she said. I've been trying to find one who handles estate disputes and isn't going to want a retainer I can't afford in the next 2 weeks. How much time do you have before you need to respond? 23 days. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the folder. Then at her. She was watching me with the kind of steady look people use when they are bracing for someone to tell them it is worse than they thought. It was not as bad as she thought. But it was real, and real was enough. All right, I said. Let's start with what you have. We spent most of that afternoon at my table. She had more than she realized. The deed transfer with proper signatures and 2 witnesses. The notarized filing. Martin's medical records from the year he filed, clean and clear. A card he had sent her the following Christmas with 2 sentences on it about the land that said more than any legal document. She had kept everything. That told me something about her. Not sentimental exactly. Careful. Like she had always known somewhere in the back of her mind that she might need to show her work someday. By the time we had it organized, the light through the kitchen window had gone orange and low. I'll call Dale Merritt tomorrow, I said. He did some estate work before he retired. He'll know who to send you to. She looked at the neat stack of papers in front of her. Then at me. Why are you doing this? The question was honest. Not suspicious. She was a woman who had been let down at the worst possible moment by the universe, and she had stopped assuming people helped without reason. Because your husband was right to protect this, I said. And someone ought to help you keep it. She looked at the table again. Her jaw moved once. Then she picked up her coffee mug and held it with both hands and nodded. Just barely. I'll take that. Dale Merritt gave me a name. Sandra Hollis. County attorney. 10 years in estate disputes. The kind of woman who wore sensible shoes and made opposing lawyers feel like they had studied the wrong subject. I drove Clara to her office that Thursday. Sandra looked over the folder for 40 minutes without saying much. Then she looked at Clara. Douglas Meadows' letter is his strongest card, she said. But it's not a legal instrument. What he's actually arguing is undue influence, and the bar on that is high. He needs to show you exploited something. Dependency, diminished capacity, isolation. Your husband had none of those at the time of filing. She tapped the medical records. Clean bill of health. 2 credible witnesses on the deed. The notarization. And 14 months of living on that property without challenge. She set the folder down. You're in a better position than you feel like you're in. Clara let out a breath. Is this winnable? Sandra looked at her evenly. Winnable is not the word I use. Defensible is. And right now you have everything you need to defend it well. What I need from you over the next 3 weeks is documentation of your presence on that property. Utility bills, maintenance records, any work you've had done. Anything that shows you've been living there and running that place since Martin filed. She looked at me briefly. Bring your neighbor if it helps. I drove Clara home in silence for most of it. She had her hands in her lap and was looking at the road ahead. He's gonna make this ugly, she said. Probably. She glanced at me. You don't sugarcoat much. Doesn't seem useful. She almost smiled. No, I guess not. Douglas came the following week. I was at Clara's place when he pulled in because she had asked me to help inventory the barn for the documentation Sandra wanted. He came in his big clean truck with a man I did not know riding along in the passenger seat. The other man had the look of someone who reviewed things and reported back. Douglas got out and walked toward the house. Then he saw me near the barn door and his pace slowed. Didn't know you'd have company, he said to Clara. She was standing near the gate with her clipboard. This is my property, Douglas. I'll have whoever I want here. His eyes moved over the barn. Then back to me. Thomas Reeves, right? The neighbor. That's right. He smiled. Must be nice to have a reason to come around. There was weight under that. The kind men put in a sentence when they want to land something and still be able to say they meant nothing by it. Clara's face went tight. I saw it. I kept my voice flat. We're doing property documentation for the estate response. Anything else? Douglas looked at the barn, then at Clara. He had the easy patience of a man who believed time was on his side. I'm not trying to make this hard, Maggie. I'm trying to make sure Martin's wishes were honored. Her name was Clara, not Maggie. I filed that away. His name is on the deed, she said, which is exactly how he wanted it. Douglas shook his head the way people do when they want you to think they are sad instead of calculating. We'll let the lawyers sort it out. He turned and walked back to his truck. His passenger had not said a word. They pulled out of the yard and Clara stood watching until the truck was gone. Then she looked at her clipboard like she was checking herself. He calls me Maggie, she said. He knows I hate it. I picked up the camera to keep photographing the barn equipment. Then he's telling you something. She looked at me. That he thinks this is still his to win, I said. Don't let him think that. Her chin came up. I don't intend to. The documentation took 4 days. I helped where she needed it. Eli helped too once he understood why it mattered. He turned out to be methodical about it. He made a spreadsheet without being asked. Organized everything by date, category, and location. Clara looked at it over his shoulder and put one hand on his back without saying anything. He leaned into it just slightly, the way kids do when they are pretending not to need it. That was when I started to understand what they were to each other. Not just mother and son. 2 people carrying the same loss from different angles, trying to figure out how to hold the other one up without letting the other one see them struggle. Sandra submitted the response with 9 days to spare. Douglas filed a second motion 2 weeks after that. Clara called me on a Tuesday evening. Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it that had not been there in the first call. Not panic. Something closer to tired. He found a neighbor, she said. Someone who says he heard Martin mention the land going back to the family. Who? She told me the name. I knew the man. He lived 2 miles from the Hennessy place and had a long history of minding other people's business when there was something in it for him. Is it true? I asked. Clara went quiet for a second. Martin talked about family all the time. He could have said something like that at a barbecue 6 years ago, and it wouldn't have meant what Douglas is making it mean. Tell Sandra tomorrow, I said. First thing. I know. And Clara. He's throwing things until something sticks. That means his real case is thin. Another pause. Then quieter, how do you know that? Because if he had something solid, he wouldn't need a second-hand conversation from a man who lives 2 miles away. I heard her exhale. Okay. I went over the next morning without her asking. Just showed up with coffee and sat at the table while she called Sandra. That was all. I did not say much. Some situations do not need words. They need another warm body in the room so the person on the phone knows they are not alone. Sandra had seen the witness already. She was not concerned. Douglas showed up at the property one more time. This time without the other man. Just him, mid-afternoon, standing near the fence line with his hands in his pockets like he was measuring something. Clara was in the barn. I was fixing the latch on the side door. I saw him first. I walked out to the fence without hurrying. He watched me come. She's not available, I said. He smiled. I'm not looking for her. Just driving by. This is her property, I said. Driving by means driving by. His smile held but his eyes went flat. You know this isn't going to go the way she's hoping. Funny, I said. Sandra Hollis seemed to see it differently. That name took something out of his posture. Just a small thing. But it was there. Clara has documentation back 8 years, I said. She has 2 witnesses on the deed, clean health records on the filing date, and a property that has been operated continuously in her name for going on 2 years. Whatever that letter says, it isn't enough. Douglas looked at me for a long second. You sound pretty sure for a neighbor. I have a fence line that touches this property, I said. What happens to it matters to me. He got back in his truck. He drove past without looking over. I went back to the barn latch. Clara came to the barn door a few minutes later. She had heard some of it. Thank you, she said. I tightened the bolt. Part of it was selfish. She leaned on the doorframe. How is any of that selfish? Your property staying your property means your property doesn't turn into something I don't want next door. She looked at me for a second. Then she gave the kind of laugh that starts low and surprised. I haven't heard that logic before. It's a good logic. She shook her head, but she was still smiling, and that was more than enough for me. The hearing was on a Thursday morning in March. Clara had asked me to come, and I had said yes before she finished asking. The county courthouse. A small room with old carpet and a judge who had the unhurried look of someone who had seen the same argument in different clothes many times. Douglas sat across the table with his attorney. He had a third man with him now. Someone from the county appraisal office, I figured, given the rolled tube he was carrying. Sandra had Clara's folder. She had everything we had put together plus 3 additional statements she had gathered herself. One from the utility company confirming continuous service in Clara's name since Martin's filing. One from the equipment dealer who had serviced the barn machinery on Clara's account twice in the last year. And one from the county tax office confirming payment history in her name without interruption. Douglas's attorney opened with the letter. Read portions of it. Talked about family intention and the spirit of the conveyance. Sandra let him finish. Then she opened the folder and laid it out piece by piece without rushing. The medical records, the notarization, the witness statements from the deed signing, the documentation from our 4 days in the barn. Eli's spreadsheet, printed and bound. Then she looked at the judge. Mr. Meadows is arguing that his brother lacked the capacity or the freedom to make a decision he made 14 months before his death, when he was in full health, with proper legal process, and with 2 credible witnesses present. There is no medical evidence supporting diminished capacity. There is no evidence of isolation or pressure. There is clear and continuous evidence of the property being maintained and operated by the named owner from the moment of transfer to the present day. The challenge has no factual foundation. Douglas's attorney tried once more with the witness, the neighbor, the overheard conversation. Sandra looked at the judge. A person recalling a casual comment from an outdoor gathering has no way to know the context, the date, or the intent behind it. It is not testimony. It is memory used as argument. The judge looked at Douglas for a moment. Douglas stared at the table. The challenge is dismissed, the judge said. Legal costs to the challenger. That was it. Outside on the courthouse steps, the March air was thin and cold, and the sky was that flat gray that means nothing but holds everything. Clara stood at the top of the steps with her folder under her arm and did not say anything for a moment. Then she turned and looked at me. It's done. It's done. She pressed her lips together. Not to hold back tears. To hold back something bigger. Relief that sighs does not look like crying. It looks like a person trying to understand that they are allowed to stop bracing. She sat down on the top step right there in her good coat and put her hands over her face for about 10 seconds. I sat down next to her. When she lowered her hands, her eyes were wet but her face was clear. I kept thinking he had something I didn't know about, she said. He didn't. I know. But I kept thinking it. That's what people like that count on, I said. They want you so worried about what they might have that you forget what you actually have. She looked at the parking lot below. Then quietly, I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to thank me. She looked at me sideways. You have been at my house 3 times a week for 2 months. You organized half that documentation. You drove me to the attorney's office twice. She paused. Thomas. I looked at her. Thank you, she said, like it meant all of it. I nodded once because it was the only response I had that felt right. We drove back in the same quiet as always. The good kind. Not the emptied-out kind I had been living in for 3 years. The kind where 2 people are comfortable enough not to fill the air. When we pulled into her drive, Eli was at the gate. He had stayed home from school, and he was watching the truck come in with that careful face he used when he was hoping for something but not letting himself count on it. Clara got out and he looked at her face and something shifted in him. His shoulders dropped about an inch. Then he crossed the yard and she put her arms around him and he stood there and let her, which he probably would not have done with an audience a month earlier. I stayed in the truck. After a minute he looked over at me. His expression said something he was not ready to put in words yet. I lifted one hand off the steering wheel. That was all. He gave a short nod and turned back toward the house. That evening, Clara came to my place with Eli and a covered dish and no announcement. I opened the door and looked at the 3 of them. The hearing worked out, she said. I figured that called for chicken. Eli walked past me into the house like he had done it before. Eli, that's rude, she said. He set the rolls on the counter. He was the one who found the plates, he said. I laughed. That got a look from him. Not annoyed. Close to amused. We ate at my kitchen table, all 4 of us, which had not had more than 1 person at it in 3 years. The plates were mismatched. Eli found that worth mentioning. Clara told him to eat his food. He said the table was fine, he was just noting it. At some point during dinner, Clara started telling me about what she was planning to do with the barn once this was all settled. Fix the lean on the west wall. Convert the back section into proper storage. Maybe run a few animals in the spring, nothing major, just enough to use the pasture and offset the feed costs. She talked like someone who had been holding the plans inside for months and was finally letting them out. I want Eli to have something to work, she said. Something that's his. She looked at her plate. Martin wanted that. He just ran out of time to build it. Eli was quiet beside her. I looked at him. You ever done much fencing? He shook his head. Want to learn? He looked at his mother. She gave him nothing. His call. He looked back at me. Yeah. Okay. That was the beginning of a different kind of arrangement. Not the legal fight, not the emergency repairs. Something quieter and longer. Eli started coming over on Saturday mornings. I taught him how to set a corner brace, how to pull wire without going slack, how to check for ground movement before you drove a post. He did not talk much at first. Then he did. Not about Martin. About other things. School, a kid he was having trouble with, whether I thought he should try out for something or just work. The questions a boy asks when he is trying to figure out what kind of man he is going to be, and the man he would have asked is gone. I did not try to be that man. I was just the one there with the post driver and the time. Clara watched it from a distance and did not say anything about it, which told me she understood exactly what it was. One evening in late April, she was at my table while Eli finished up outside. It had become easy by then, her being there. She knew where the mugs were. She knew my coffee went black and I did not drink it past 7 or I would not sleep. I knew she always read the last page of a bill before the first one and that she tapped her pen against the table in threes when she was working up to something. She looked up from the paper she was reading and said, "I've been thinking about the East Pasture. The strip between our two places." I looked at her. "What about it?" She set the paper down. "It's been sitting since Martin died. Your fence runs along half of it. If we cleared it and ran it together, it would make sense for both of us." She looked at me steadily. "I'm not asking for charity. I put in half the labor and half the cost. Whatever it produces, we split it." I looked at the window, then back at her. "What made you think of it?" She shrugged. "It's good ground. And you know it as well as I do. Seems stupid to leave it empty when two people who share the fence line could use it." That was not all of it. I knew that, but she was right about the ground. "I'll look at the drainage next week," I said. "If it holds what I think it holds, we can talk numbers." Her face did not break into anything dramatic. She just nodded and picked the paper back up. That was Clara. She did not perform things she felt. She just kept going and let the going show you what mattered. Eli came in through the back door and looked at us both at the table. "You guys talking about the fence?" I said yes. He looked at his mother. He said he'd show me how to run the wire on Saturday. She looked at me. I shrugged. Boys got to learn the whole job. She went back to her paper. He went to the refrigerator. And the house that had been too quiet for 3 years had a different sound entirely. I had not planned any of it. I had been living small and steady, and I had convinced myself that was enough. Then one February night, a knock came at my door and everything began to shift the way big things shift when they do it slowly enough that you do not catch them moving. The East Pasture got cleared in May. Eli and I did most of it. Clara worked 3 of the days alongside us. Sleeves up, bandana around her hair, moving brush like she had been doing it her whole life. She had not. But she did not let that matter. The first morning she pulled her truck alongside mine at the fence line and got out and looked at the field. She said, "This is going to be good." I looked out at it. "Yeah, I think so." She looked at me then the way she had been looking at me more lately. "Not long. Just enough." "Good," she said again. And this time she was not talking about the field. I did not say anything. I just started walking toward the fence and she fell into step beside me and we went to work. Some things do not need naming. They just need tending. That is what I have been learning. The quiet life I kept so carefully for 3 years did not disappear. It changed shape. It made room. And the thing that moved into the space left behind was better than I had any right to expect from 3 soft knocks on a cold February night. Clara knocked on my door because her boiler quit. I opened it because that is what you do. I never closed it the same way again. If the story hit something, drop a like and leave a comment below. Tell me whether you think Clara and Thomas were right to take it slow. And come back next time. There's always another story.